Wa alaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Let me just get everything set up. Assalamu alaikum, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, alaikum salam to each of you. Jazakallah khair for tuning in today. Subhanallah, as Imam Sharif reminded us just now, tonight is the first of the odd nights. And inshallah, I will definitely remember all of you in my dua, and I hope that all of you will remember me and my family in your dua as well. MashaAllah, I got old friends tuning in. You guys are going to make me nervous. Just wanted to start by saying my salams to everybody. Alaikum salam to each of you. It has become our habit, our tradition that we greet each other with salams. So please exchange greetings with each other as well. Reply to each other. Greet each other. Wish each other well. That's number one. And number two, please take a moment to share the feed. If you're watching on Facebook, you can share it on your page or on your timeline or whatever it is. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can share that link in your family threads, in your WhatsApp messages, and whatever else. So I'll give you guys a second to do that as well. And I'm going to sip some of my tea to calm the cough down. Again, please do forgive me if I cough into your ears from such a distance. Wa alaikum salam. MashaAllah. So nice to see so many people tuning in. Once again, on a Wednesday night, in the middle of a strange and unique Ramadan. And actually, one thing I remembered, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, and even on Facebook, remember to either subscribe or like the page. It helps us to also increase the traffic and it spreads this to more people. So please do subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or like the Tarbiyah Institute page if you're watching on Facebook. And Jazakallah khair for that as well. If you guys are all ready, Isa is saying salam. I hope he remembers me. Yes, I remember him as well. Assalamu alaikum, Isa. I wish I could take a second to, respond to everybody, but I'm responding to you all collectively. And inshallah, we'll get started. Excuse me. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I begin in the name of Allah and I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I recognize His might, His majesty, His authority over each and every one of us. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He would send His peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon his family members, upon his companions, upon his loved ones, and upon all of the men and women that walk in his footsteps and adhere to his path. And I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make each and every one of us, each and every one of you among them in this life and in the next. Allahumma ameen. My dear brothers and sisters, once again, I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. But tonight, we begin with what is perhaps one of the most well-known stories in not only the Islamic tradition, but in the entire Abrahamic tradition, the tradition that includes Ahlul Kitab, the tradition that includes our cousins in the Christian community and in the Jewish community. This is perhaps one of the most well-known and well-told stories of all time. It's one of those famous epics that includes an incredible battle, a battle between the Hebrews, Bani Israel, and the army that was the force that was led by Goliath, and his forces. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also makes mention of this story in the Quran, further emphasizing its importance. In Surah Baqarah, he begins to narrate the story when he says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر إلى الملأ من بني إسرائيل من بعد موسى إذ قالوا لنبي له ابعث لنا ملكا نقاتل في سبيل الله. Have you not considered the leaders of Bani Israel, the leaders of the Hebrews, after the time of Moses, when they said to a prophet of theirs, raise for us a king and we will fight in the way of Allah. So this begins to paint some of the context, which is that Goliath and his army, these are the Philistines, these are maritime people who are taking over and conquering some of the lands that Bani Israel would call home. And they're attacking one town after another, one village after another, and pushing out Bani Israel from their homes, spilling their blood, separating families from each other, and taking lives of innocents. And this is ongoing. And again, they're led by this particular individual by the name of Jalut in the Quran, Goliath in the English language. So Jalut, who is this particularly vicious and particularly blasphemous individual, is at the lead of all of these efforts. And so at some point, and this is after Musa alayhi salam, this is after they've settled in this area, at some point they go to a prophet that was among them. In the Quran, he's not named, but in the biblical tradition, he is referred to as Samuel. We don't confirm or deny, but we just kind of to follow along with the story. They go to this particular prophet of theirs, and they say to him, would you appoint for us a king? Because their assumption is that if they receive, if they get a king appointed, if somebody is put in leadership over them in this kind of political way, that they will then be able to unify. They will then be able to to fight back. I mean, it's interesting. They already have a prophet among them, and they could go forth under the banner of this prophet, but they want a king, right? Already kind of shows you a little bit of their mindset. And so he actually, he responds favorably, right? And in the following ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالُوا لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ بَعَثَ لَكُمْ طَالُوتَ مَلِكًا. And the Prophet said to them, indeed, Allah has raised for you Talut as a king. And immediately they are unsatisfied. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a selection through the Prophet, right? And they're not happy with this selection. And in order to kind of refute and rebut this selection, they provide some very extremely flimsy and weak reasoning. They say, قالوا أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ الْمُلْكُ عَلَيْنَا وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِمُلْكِ مِنْهُ وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. They said, how can this individual, how can he have kingship over us while we are more worthy of kingship than him? And he has not even been given any measure of wealth. Listen to the logic that they provide in order to refute this decision that has been made for them from the one who they asked to make that decision, right? They say that he isn't from a powerful family like ours, right? So how can this make sense? Why would he reign over us when he's not from a powerful family, a politically powerful family, that is? And they go on. They say he doesn't even have any wealth to his name, right? Because if you were not powerful, then one of the ways that you could get into power was to buy your way in, right? To kind of push your way in using the power of your wealth. Right? They say he doesn't even have any of this, as if these are the appropriate measures of one to lead them in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Which is what they asked for in the beginning. Fi sabilillah is the word they used. And you see, in their attitude and in their flimsy reasoning, they are being extremely judgmental against Talut, right? They're judging him for his family background, for his socioeconomic background, and they judge him, and for their judgmental attitude leads them to believe that he's not fit to lead them, right? Because he doesn't fit what they were expecting, per se. And they're being so open about their judgmental attitude. And their prophet could have responded to them, out of anger. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Are you serious? You asked me to ask Allah to do this. Allah did this, and now you're coming up with these, strange arguments, right? But he does reason with them, as the ayah continues. قال إن الله اصطفاه عليكم وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم والله يؤتي ملكه من يشاء والله واسع عليم. He says, the Prophet, he says to them, indeed, Allah has chosen him over you. He has increased him abundantly in knowledge and stature. And Allah gives his sovereignty to whoever he wills. And Allah is all-encompassing and knowing. So he gives them these 4 reasons, right? He said, to try and deal with their mindset. He says, number 1, first of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who chose him, not me. If anything is going to make sense, it's the choice of Allah, right? Especially if this is the cause of Allah, as you so said. Number 2, he is intellectually and physically better equipped for the job, right? That's what he needs, this intellectual and physical, superiority to be able to perform this task. Number 3, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides who to give power to, that's Allah's choice. And number 4, at the end of the day, are you really going to question Allah's awareness and Allah's judgment over this situation? And this whole story, my brothers and sisters, one of the key lessons in this is about judgmental attitudes, about when people become judgmental and the impact it has on them and on all of the people around them. I want to say, before I even get into that, ironically, I have heard this very same story shared as a way to pass judgment on Bani Israel. To say, look, that's how they just are. They're just like that. They're just messed up like this, right? So you're taking the story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using to teach us about being judgmental and passing judgment on people in this inappropriate way, and using it to pass judgment on Bani Israel. You've missed the whole point, and that's a really sad irony. The story is about being judgmental and its problems, right? It's one of the great lessons here that being judgmental is actually one of the oldest of vices. It's one of the oldest of issues that human societies suffer from and continue to suffer from. And just remember how the story ends, right? As the army marches forth, little by little, the army of Talut is whittled down, and eventually it becomes a small band. Little by little, those judgmental elements are weeded out a little at a time. Little by little, the army is actually purified, right? The army is purified, and as Allah says in the following ayah, or many ayat later, فَهَزَمُوهُمْ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ. So they defeated the army of Goliath. They defeated them by God's leave, and David slew Goliath, right? Dawood slew, or he beat Jalut. Victory, my brothers and sisters, only came once the judgmental people had been removed from the ranks, right? Once the judgmental attitude had been cleansed. Victory came at the hands of those, not who were being judgmental, but at the hands of those who were being judged by those judgmental elements, right? Those who came from humble beginnings, like Talut and like Dawood, both of whom came from very humble beginnings. You see, judgmental attitudes have dire consequences, brothers and sisters. Number 1, they blinded these people, and they blind anybody. Judgmental attitudes will blind you from an honest self-appraisal. From looking at yourself and measuring yourself, it will blind you from that. A judgmental attitude gave them a false sense of superiority. It gave them a false sense of virtue, by the way, right? People sometimes think that they are being virtuous, and that allows them to be judgmental, right? Number 3, it holds them from making good choices, right? It prevents you from making appropriate choices for the circumstances that you're in. And number 4, it removes you from moments of greatness, right? Imagine all of those people who had been removed from the army of Talut, and they were removed from that moment of greatness when the small band of fighters overcame this immense army of incredibly vicious, fighters led by Jalut, right? They were removed from that moment of greatness. They didn't get to witness the miracle of Dawood alayhi salam, right? And that brings me to tonight's message from the divine. Tonight's message is to those of us who allow ourselves to get distracted in passing judgment on others. It is to those of us who forget to first inspect ourselves. It is for those of us who are so dismissive of others, and to those of us who are unable to see the value in others. Even those who are closest to us, we become blind to the value that they present. Tonight's message comes to us from these 4 ayat in Surah Al-Mu'minun. In Surah Al-Mu'minun, ayah number 60, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْتُونَ مَا أَتَوْا وَقُلُوبُهُمْ وَجِلَةٌ أَنَّهُمْ إِلَى رَبِّهِمْ رَاجِعُونَ أُولَئِكَ يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ وَهُمْ لَهَا سَابِقُونَ. And they who give what they give while their hearts are fearful. They're fearful because they know they will return to their Lord. And they hasten to good, and in that they outpace others. You see, for those people, it doesn't matter how great their deeds are. Their hearts still tremble. Their hearts are still moved at the thought that they will stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be held to account. They're not telling themselves, I'm good, right? They're not making announcements about their, how they are confirmed Jannati, right? They're not making announcements about how they are, guaranteed access into Jannah. They are worried about that meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're nervous about it, right? And that's because they focus on their own condition. They focus so much on their own condition, and they do as much good as possible as a result. They are sabiqun, right? They're not worried about who's in the race and who's winning and who's losing. They're just trying to go as fast as possible towards good. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, وَلَا نُكَلِّفُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا وَلَدَيْنَا كِتَابٌ يَنطِقُ بِالْحَقِّ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. And we charge no soul except with that within its capacity. And with us is a record which speaks with truth, and they will not be wronged. You see, the point of this ayah is that being judgmental is absolutely useless. It serves no purpose, because every single soul will be judged by Allah by its own capacity, and no soul will be wronged even an ounce. So we need to get focused on what my capacity. I need to ask myself, what is my capacity? Instead of getting distracted by thinking about what somebody else's capacity is, and I'll never actually truly be able to know. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in ayah number 63, بَلْ قُلُوبُهُمْ فِي غَمْرَةٍ مِّنْ هَذَا وَلَهُمْ أَعْمَالٌ مِّن دُونِ ذَلِكَ هُمْ لَهَا عَامِلُونَ. Their hearts are covered with confusion over this, and they have evil deeds aside from disbelief, which they are continuing to do. See, this is about the opposite group. The group of people who are so focused on passing judgment and being judgmental. They have this judgmental attitude. The opposite is true for them. Their hearts do not tremble and move when they think of their standing before Allah. Rather, their hearts are in a state of confusion because they are distracted by their judgmental attitude towards others, thinking about whether this person is going to make it and that person is going to, be punished, not thinking about themselves and making an honest self-appraisal. You see, this dynamic, it goes even further back than our existence as humanity. Remember when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked the people of the heavens to bow to Adam alayhi salam, those who were of introspection, those who were of self-reflection, immediately they obeyed. But when Iblis, who was not of that sort, passed judgment on Adam alayhi salam, in that moment when he passed judgment, is the moment he became shaitan. Evil, my brothers and sisters, as we know it, was born in a moment of judgmental attitude. Every act of discrimination that comes thereafter, discrimination based on race, on language, on class, country, state, color, whatever it may be, every act of unfair discrimination that happens thereafter, it becomes a reenactment of that very first moment between shaitan and Adam alayhi salam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from engaging in such reenactments. You see, this judgmental attitude, by the way, it was the hallmark of the enemies of Islam, particularly those in Mecca. In the early days of Islam, this is how they operated, with this kind of judgmental attitude. As the Quran mentions in Surah Al-Zukhruf, وَقَالُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ عَلَى رَجُلٍ مِّنَ الْقَرْيَتَيْنِ عَظِيمٍ. They say, why was the Quran not sent down upon a great man from one of the two cities, from Mecca and Taif? Why not send it to a great man, right? Someone like, as the commentators mentioned, they had someone in mind like Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira. Walid ibn al-Mughira, who is actually the father of Khalid ibn al-Walid, right? They asked, well, why not send it to one of great status and stature, right? It's, it might be worth thinking about, actually. Maybe if someone like Al-Walid was given the Quran, it would have been more palatable to the Meccans early on. But think of what we would lose, right? Imagine how much we would lose from not having the character and the adab and the beauty of the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And our hearts are attached to our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? How much of that we would lose. And how much good do we miss out on in our own lives on a daily basis, brothers and sisters, when we get distracted with judgmental attitudes? Being judgmental is not the same, by the way, and I have to make this clarification. Being judgmental is not the same as having sound judgment. There has to be a difference. If you think that judging poor behavior in order to render advice, or that differentiating between halal and haram, or that discerning between what is moral and what is immoral, if you think that these are judgmental, we have a bigger problem. We have a bigger problem, brothers and sisters. The inability to tell the difference between sound judgment and judgmental attitudes has contributed to the world that we live in today, where taking any moral position is considered judgmental. It's considered to be wrong and hateful. This is an extreme. You see, calling behavior wrong or harmful or self-destructive cannot be judgmental. Offering advice in an insightful way, people will tell you that that's judgmental, right? No matter how insightful it is. People will tell you that standing up for what is right, even if it is, not popular, they'll say this is judgmental. But if it's popular, they'll say, what a wonderful person, right? Moral terms like sin and virtue and good and evil, they're being erased from our vocabularies. And they're being replaced by relative terms like legal and illegal, useful or error and mistake, right? We're replacing our entire vocabulary with things that will remove judgment entirely. Think back, my brothers and sisters, to the stories that I just mentioned. In the story of Bani Israel, right? Yes, Bani Israel, some of them were being judgmental, but also their prophet was exercising sound judgment. And Talut was exercising sound judgment, right? That's important. Think back to the moment between Shaitan and Adam alayhi salam, right? Imagine if Shaitan was told after he refused to bow and said that I'm made of fire and he's made of clay. Imagine if he was told, well, that's your opinion, that's okay, right? That's not what happened, right? He was held accountable for his behavior, right? There has to be some judgment. And we're reminded of the ayah in the Quran, also in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. And thus we have made you a just community, that you will be witness over people and the messenger will be a witness over you. My brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls us to introspection, and He also calls us to bear witness to the truth. He calls us to leave judgmental attitudes while at the same time calling us to exercise sound judgment. Tonight's message from the divine is clear. If we get distracted in our judgmental attitudes, we might lose our own hearts. But if we abandon sound judgment, we would lose the Lord of those hearts. So as we immerse ourselves in self-assessment, let us always bear witness to the truth as well. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who are freed of having judgmental attitudes and are of those who exercise sound and righteous judgment in every aspect of our lives. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open our hearts to the Quran, to make us capable of receiving messages from the divine on a regular and daily basis. My brothers and sisters, I have some announcements. And as always, I always ask you to stay for those announcements. That's the responsible thing to do. And then inshallah, you can go and I will go as well. So just if you give me a few seconds here. First, I want to give you some announcements and updates. The fundraising update, Alhamdulillah, mashallah, this is the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the work of so many of you community members. We are now at $360,000 raised of our $500,000 goal, which means we're just $140,000 short. Now these are the last 10 nights. I want to remind you, especially on this odd night, as we engage in ibadah, as we engage in worship, and we try to focus on ourselves and our conditions, we also need to make sure that we work on purifying our wealth, we work on purifying our sustenance and giving from that. Even if you've given before, consider giving again. Make it a habit, especially in these last 10 nights. And if for those of you who haven't and you've waited, now's the time, right? There's really nothing to be waiting for anymore. Any of these nights could be the night of Laylatul Qadr. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you by witnessing the night of power, Laylatul Qadr, in these last 10 nights. Allahumma ameen. Once again, we're just 140,000 short, and we're relying on all of you to make that successful, inshallah. Also, a reminder that we have a virtual Ramadan volunteer meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. Many people have been missing the opportunity to volunteer, and actually we've come up with some really important tasks that need to be done. We need help with for Ramadan, for Laylatul Qadr, and for Eid. So we're hosting a meeting tomorrow. You can sign up for that meeting using the link that'll be shared here on the side. Again, that's tomorrow at 6 p.m. We have a special Laylatul Qadr program planned for all of us on Tuesday, May 19th. That's the 27th night, which is one of the possible nights for Laylatul Qadr. We'll be holding live sessions throughout the night, 3 to be exact, one at 9 p.m., a khatira, one at 12 a.m., a collective community dua session, and one at 2:30, dua al-qunut. And more information can be found at live.tarbiyah.org. Also, we have a very special program planned for the Eid drive-through celebration, which will take place at our Foothills location. We're trying to be safe. We know we cannot pray Eid together. It would not be the safe and responsible thing to do. But we are organizing a drive-through where you can safely celebrate Eid by driving into our Foothills location and going through the various stations. I think there's like 5 stations. Some really amazing and beautiful activities planned for the entire community on that day. That will be Sunday, May 24th. And finally, a reminder to give your zakah. The link is included in the description of this post. Zakatul Fitr, Zakatul Mal, whatever it is that you need to do, make sure you do that today or before this month is over. And then some dua requests. The first is from a sister who just recently got married, subhanAllah, just a couple months ago. She also has one young son, 7 years old, and she just found out that she has stage 4 stomach cancer, which has spread to much of her body. The survival rate for these things, sometimes is a scary thing, but we make dua for her. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give her healing. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give her a full recovery. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate her pain and suffering, and to alleviate the pain and suffering of all of those who are ill in some way, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate the pain of all of all of our loved ones who are suffering in some way. Allahumma ameen. Also, Brother Talal, his father, who, he's one of our elders in the community. We see him and he always has this beautiful smile on his face. He suffered a fall a couple of days ago and broke his left femur bone, which is a really serious injury. We're asking all of you to please keep him in your du'as. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him a full recovery, to give him his full mobility back, to keep him safe and sound through this process of healing, and to alleviate his pain through this process as well. And also a dua request for brother, sorry, lost my announcements here. Brother Munir Sadiq. He lives overseas, but he's a close family friend of many of the community members here. Tested positive for COVID-19 and is currently on a ventilator. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him cure and healing. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep him safe and to bring him back to his loved ones. Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters, for tuning in. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. You may go to your families. My wife has prepared some kanafa for the first time, so I'm going to go taste test that, and we'll see you all tomorrow evening. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.